Steve, thank you for that prayer. And I tell you, tonight, with JJ gone, I want to mention something. He does a lot. He and Nia do so much. And I've got to wait while he's gone so that I can brag on him. But no, I'm just kidding. But I'm very thankful for all that he does. And I realized as I was sitting there on Sunday nights, he also gets the prayers together. So I asked Steve to do the prayer. And David Danger, could you do the closing prayer for me? And be ready for it. Thank you, brother. All right. But very thankful for all the work that is done, especially behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, while the lesson this morning was being done, someone had a question surrounding the lesson that they asked. I wanted to kind of focus on that tonight. Jesus brought Lazarus back from the dead. Why did he not raise his cousin John from the dead? That was a very good question. And if you'll turn to John chapter 3 and verse 22, we got several passages in John and also in Matthew mainly that we're going to look at. It really comes to show that there was a plan in place for John coming, and it would appear for his going. John 3:22 says, "After this, Jesus and his disciples went into the Judean countryside, and he remained there with them and was baptizing. John also was baptizing at Aenon near Salem, because water was plentiful there, and people were coming and being baptized." Verse 24, "For John had not yet been put in prison." What we focused on this morning is that John, because he spoke against Herod and Herodias, that he was put in prison and met his end there, at least his physical end. Verse 25 says, "Now a discussion arose between some of John's disciples and a Jew over purification. And they came to John and said to him, 'Rabbi, he who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you bore witness,'" that would be in John chapter 1 when he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, hear him," says, "Look, he is baptizing and all are going to him." He's saying, "John, we're losing disciples here. We're losing followers." John answered, "A person cannot receive even one thing unless it is given him from heaven. You yourselves bear me witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent before him. The one who is the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete." He says this right before he goes to prison. "This joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but I must decrease." He understood that his role of being a voice in the desert, making straight the way of the Lord, would have an increase and then a decrease, so that Jesus could increase and John would decrease. So Jesus seemed to understand this, as his response to John's death affected him personally. In Matthew 14:12 says, "And his disciples came and took the body and buried it. And they went and told Jesus." We read that this morning, but we stopped there. Verse 13 of Matthew 14 says, "Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick." So in response to John's death, he went to a desolate place by himself. You see, Jesus had a plan to be in a desolate place by himself. Obviously, him and the Father, possibly even discussing the plan, discussing why this had to take place. And then he sees this great crowd. Not so much a desolate place, is it? But in response to this, in his great compassion, he healed their sick. They had a great purpose that they had for him. So in John's honor, you see, Jesus healed others. John's death caused others to think that Jesus was John reincarnated. Matthew 16, just 2 chapters later in verse 13, says, "Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' They said, "Some say John the Baptist." See, John's already died at this point. They think Jesus is John the Baptist, reincarnated. Others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, "But who do you say I am?" And Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." You see, if John didn't decrease, it's very possible that Peter and Andrew, his brother, who was a follower of John, would have seen that John was to be the one to increase. He would not have understood. John said, "This is the Lamb of God," and that's when Andrew went and followed Jesus and went and brought Peter. And now they understand that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and God has revealed that to him. Notice this is upon this rock he would build his church. Upon this confession that Jesus is Lord, he would build his church. Jesus must increase and John decrease means Jesus was able to build his church. It was John's death that helped Jesus explain his own would come. Matthew 17:9 says, "And as they were coming down the mountain," this is after the transfiguration, "Jesus commanded them, 'Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead.' And the disciples asked him, 'Then why do the scribes say that first Elijah must come?' And he answered, 'Elijah does come, and he will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come.' And they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them of John the Baptist. See, John was like Elijah that came, preparing the way for the Lord, and they did to him as they pleased. They killed him. And Jesus says, in the same way, they're going to kill me. The Son of Man will suffer at their hands. So it was John's death that helped his words he had just said to ring true. In Matthew 16:24, Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." See, the cross was an understanding of Roman torture at that time. But it was not like the crucifix that's worn often on on a necklace or placed behind on a wall. For us, when we see this, we take up our cross, we understand this completely. Jesus is explaining he's going to die. And he's used John for them to understand this. John has died, I will also. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits its soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? So why did he not raise his cousin John from the dead? Because Jesus understood that this is not the home of our soul. This is not the final resting place, and that we've got to make sure that our soul is ready to return to the Lord. So John gave his life for Christ. Have you given your life to Christ? This evening, we have an invitation that we're offering to make sure that we have. To make sure that we're ready to meet the Lord in the air. If we can encourage you, if we can maybe study with you, if we can pray with you, if you have a need, please respond while together we stand and while we sing.